Good evening and welcome to our October 11th Board of Selectmen meeting. I ask we start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start with the reading of the agenda. We will go over our September 27th meeting minutes. We will then go on to community relations, announcements, and open forums. Then we have no items under appointments and resignations. We have two scheduled appointments tonight. We have 6:40 appointment with Casella for a donation of animal control van and declaration of the 2003 van as a surplus. We have a 7 o'clock appointment with the Recreation Commission for a skate bike park fundraising thermometer. Under new business, we have one item, and that is the Winter Wash Sand Bid Award. Under old business, we have 3 items. Number 1 is public safety issue, a sports event. Number 2 is special town meeting warrant, approval warrant motions and capital. And number 3 is the interim police chief hiring process. We'll then move on to committee reports, then board of selectmen policy reviews. We are joined by our new student select person tonight, Kylie Chupka. Then we'll move on to the town administrator's report, and then any other business unknown at the time of posting. Our next regular selectmen meeting will be November 25th, and we will be going to executive session, and we will exit executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. And with that, what is the board's wishes with our September 27th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. We'll now read the announcements. There'll be a special town meeting coming up October 18th at 7 p.m. at the Charlton Middle School, and that's coming up fast. That is next week. Trick or Treat will be held on Monday, October 31st from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The Charlton Christmas concert and tree lighting ceremony will be Sunday, December 4th at 4:30 at the Charlton Town Common and Town Library. From October 1st to December 31st, the animal inspector will be conducting barn inspections. The Charlton Cemetery Department will begin its annual fall cleanup on Monday, October 3rd. All flower pots and all decorations must be removed before this date. Any items left behind will be removed and discarded by Cemetery Department personnel. Seasonal items may be placed on lots after November 21st. There will be a Charlton Fire Department Family Fun Day on Sunday, October 16th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Power Station Road. Bring the family down for pizza and ice cream. Come see a vehicle extrication demo, see the new tower in operation, maybe even take a ride in a bucket, have the children take part in the mini firefighter challenge and other activities. As a reminder, real estate and personal property taxes are due November 1st. Trunk or Treat at 4 CAAC, 4 Jessup Hill Road, Community Center, will be on Saturday, October 29th from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. The Charlton Fire Department would like to have everyone check their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms this month. This simple test takes less than 5 minutes. Please do it today. As a reminder, there will be early voting in Charlton at the municipal building at 37 Main Street on Monday the 24th, Tuesday the 25th, Wednesday the 26th, Thursday the 27th, Monday the 31st, Tuesday November 1st, Wednesday the 2nd, Thursday the 3rd, and Friday the 4th. And there'll be early voting at the Overlook Masonic Home Health Center at 88 Masonic Hill Road on Saturday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. For more information, please visit townofcharlton.net. One more announcement. This is a CMRPC announcement. The Town of Charlton holds community meeting to determine open space and recreation needs. All Charlton residents are invited to attend a community meeting at 7 p.m. this Wednesday, October 26th, next Wednesday, October 26th, to share thoughts regarding open space and recreational issues, opportunities, and needs. The meeting will be held at the Charlton Senior Center, which is located in the basement of the Town Hall at 37 Main Street. At this meeting, residents will also have an opportunity to learn about ongoing open space and recreation planning efforts, as well as hear the results of the open space and recreation survey that ran from July to September. Does anyone else have any other announcements? Is anyone here for open forum? Seeing none, we will move on right on time for our first scheduled appointment, 6:40 appointment with Casella. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. As you know, we have many businesses in and around Charlton that's been very generous to us in assisting us. And Casella is one of those businesses who has been helpful. As you know, historically, they have made several donations to us, including the iPads that we use with these polka dots to help us go green. And they have assisted, one of the initiatives has been to help us go green. I became aware of the animal control van being actually rather dangerous with a broken door and several other things, and I had a conversation with Mr. John Casella, and he offered to provide the town with a animal control van. He also upgraded it so that it would be energy efficient, so it is an EcoBoost type van, and we do have that outside. Tonight we have Tracy Markham, who's here, if you want to come up, if I may,
Absolutely.
to present the van to the, and I'd like to also thank the chief and Ann Salou in finding this van, getting it, helping to the administrative piece, so that they would have what they need. So Tracy?
So
Thank you, Ms. Craver.
as-
Please have a seat.
Okay, so as Robin mentioned, we became aware of the need.
If you want to speak right into the microphone.
Became aware of the need for a new van, and we're more than happy to help the town out with that. We hope it brings many years of fine use for you. And with that said, I'm happy to present the town with a check for $30,443 and the key to the new van.
She'll take the key, I'll take the check.
Okay.
Usually how it goes.
Thank you,
Just like at home.
Tracy.
Thank you, Ms. Markham. I had a chance right before this meeting started to take a look at the van. Oh my God. it's
That looks
beautiful.
great, doesn't it?
And we do really appreciate it. So our thanks goes out to Ms. Liu and Chief. Thank you again for finding this, and thank you so much for your generosity. Mr.
And
Swenson?
I'd just like to point out the gracious donation of the iPads that neither Tracy nor Casella is responsible for the polka dots. So we don't worry about, we're not holding that against you.
Very good.
The van is
That was my
stylish.
theft
These are not.
device, and
It was
we have
very,
never
very
missed
very
one of them.
effective.
It's been
Very
years.
effective.
Yeah. They have grown on me, though. So then we will entertain a motion, whether it wishes the board, to accepting this donation.
I move
Swenson.
that we accept the donation of the van for the animal control officer, and I would also move that we send a letter of thanks, that we ask the town administrator to draw a letter of thanks that we will sign and send off to Casella.
Thank you.
And thank you, Tracy, for your,
You're welcome.
work on this.
We're glad to help.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And we also need, in light of the new animal control van, graciously donated, Chief Purveyor is asking the board to declare the 2003 Chevrolet animal control van as a surplus vehicle. This van has 150,176 miles on it and is in need of significant repairs to its side cargo doors as well as other needed maintenance. So I'd recommend that the board vote to declare the present animal control van as surplus.
We currently have a motion and a second on the floor, so we'll finish that motion, then we'll go to declaring
Okay.
the surplus. Chief, did you have something to say?
Just, I want to say thank you to Casella. The van, obviously being a new unit, that's great, and it'll serve the town for many, many years to come. But the other part of it is, with the new lights and everything, when Ann goes on a call, she's on a highway, with the lights that light up the back of it, and that, as far as for the safety of the animal control officer that's servicing, whatever the call is, that's paramount. So those things were not on the old van, and the old van was a used vehicle to begin with, and as we tried to build up the department and our service calls and that's what we had to work with. And this van now will facilitate the pickup of injured or deceased animals or whatever, and provide for, like I said, many years to come, a very good vehicle, reliable, that we don't have to go jump start in or have her towed in or what have you, because those are the kind of things that were occurring, especially now we're getting into the colder months. For whatever reason, sometimes we couldn't figure out why it wouldn't start or whatever, and we can't have that, because when we have a situation where animals are in distress or causing a problem, a safety problem or whatever, we need that officer to respond. And now we'll have the confidence of a new vehicle. So I really want to thank you for that.
Yes, I'd like to thank you too,
Thank you.
very much.
Maybe I can go get a quick
Wonderful.
tour.
Yes, all right, thank you.
So, we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the donation. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you so much again, and have a great night. All right, now we entertain the wishes of the board to declare the 2003 Chevrolet animal control van as a surplus.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we declare the 2003 Chevrolet Animal Control Officers van as surplus to the needs of the town of Charlton.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? It served valiantly, and we appreciate it. Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Do you think we can get the rest of our capital donated, Ms. Graver?
We've been had good fortune.
Since we are early for our
I
7
think
o'clock.
the ambulance will be a problem.
I mean, we get a ladder truck. That was pretty good. Seeing that we are running early for once, we'll move on to new business, if there's no objections from the board. Seeing none, our first item under new business is the winter washed sand bid award. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. On September 26, 2016, at 2 p.m., sealed bids marked winter washed sand were opened and read. One bid was received from Hilka Construction Company Incorporated in the amount of $14.55 per ton delivered. The recommendation from the Highway Superintendent Foskett and myself would be to award the winter washed sand bid to Hilka Construction in the amount of $14.55 per ton delivered. Last year, Hilka Construction was awarded the bid in the amount of $14.15 per ton.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we accept Hilka Construction's bid for winter wash sand in the amount of $14.55 per ton delivered.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and second. Any discussion? Mr. Swenson?
I'm just curious, Ms. Craver, if you know, or maybe Chief, if you know, how much sand we generally go through on an average in a winter?
I can get that information for you.
I'm just curious as to, 40 cents doesn't seem like much, but if we're going through thousands of tons, then it could be, not that we have much choice, but it could still be a substantial
I know
difference.
how
I'm just
much
curious
salt we go
about that.
through.
Oh, I don't
just
even,
on that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know if we can count that high. Okay, if you would, if we could get that information, I'd appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And now, we're still super early, we'll move on to old business. And item number 1 is the public safety issue for a sports event. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. At the board's last meeting, you were made aware of an injury to the public officer due to an altercation at a sports event. You had asked for more information. Chief Clute had planned on being here, so I'm not sure if maybe he thinks that this would be after 7.
Yep.
So perhaps we can hold this.
Yep, if that's okay with the board, we'll move on to item number 2, special town meeting warrant, the approval warrant, motions and capital. Thank you.
So as you know, next Tuesday is the town meeting. You have before you some draft motions. And generally, what you do is consider approving the recommendation, the motion, or recommending the motion, should I say. So the first several are generally housekeeping. So Article 1 is the appropriation of funds for unpaid bills of a prior year. At this time, we do not have any, so I will be recommending that the motion be to move to postpone consideration of Article 1 indefinitely.
And then we need to either choose to support or not support tonight.
Correct.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board for Article 1?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we move to postpone it on Article 1 indefinitely.
Second.
Thank you, motion and second, and just to clarify, the motion is to support that motion. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of supporting Article 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Is that unanimous? Okay, sorry. Motion passes unanimously. Article 2, Ms. Craver?
Would you like to stop since the chief is here and we could take him now and then he could actually go home?
Oh, sure.
And we
Chief,
could
are you,
come
are
back
you
to
ready
this?
to talk about the incident that happened at the sporting event? We're running ahead of time for once, so.
No, it's okay. I didn't realize it was on regular agenda. I thought it was executive session. So that's why I'm running late.
You're right on time. So we'll move back to item number 1 under old business.
Sure.
Ms. Craver? Oh, you already set the scene. Chief, if you want to, I know you're here to provide some more information, if you would like to go into that.
Sure, we were able to follow up on some of the questions that you had, and it seemed as though that the EMT that was injured, firefighter that was injured, was tending to one of the football players that was there. Another football player became quite out of control and came running over and started hitting the player that the firefighter was attending to. During that time, he was kind of basically blocking himself to kind of shield himself, and so he wouldn't get hit. And that's when he ended up getting struck, and that's when his finger got broken. Police department was called to the scene, and I think that the parties were separated. My EMT finished out the game so the students could continue to play, but he did feel he was in pain. He ended up going to the hospital and got checked out and found out that he had a broken finger, so that's where he's at. I did follow up with the league as well. I do have some insurance paperwork that we're going to fill out to try to recoup anything that we can recoup. I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, and I have been in contact with the team as well to ask that this player be ejected for the rest of the season. They said that's a league decision, not mine, but I have asked for that as well. So it's an unfortunate play of events, as he was not running over there to break up a fight. He was in the vicinity, and just like any other person, I think in their own right mind and consciously would certainly break up a fight. Teachers do it all the time. Police department obviously does it all the time. I was a regular citizen, I would do it as well. It's just that he was at that place, and if it was my daughter or my son being struck, I would certainly hope that the public safety person would certainly intervene somehow. I'd be upset if they didn't. So that's where we're at right now. We continue to research it, and we've never actually gotten a situation like this before, so just like anything else, another new day and something new out there.
Thank you for working with us and presenting this information. We look forward to any updates. Are there any questions from the board at all? Mr. Swanson?
One. Chief, could you keep us posted on if there's action taken against the player that came over to fight?
I'll certainly do that.
Thank you.
Most
And
definitely.
once again, our commendation, I didn't know that he continued to serve the rest of the game. That's very admirable through a broken finger, so it's just another piece of evidence that we have some of the best crew around, so thank you, Chief.
You're very welcome. Have a
Nothing's
great
ever easy.
It is easy, it's just other things get in the way, that's all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll then move back to item number 2 under old business, the special town meeting warrant. We're on our Article 2. Ms. Craver?
So Article 2 is interdepartmental transfers and/or appropriations for the FY17 budget, which is the budget that we're in now. So you have a motion and you have some draft amounts. We are still reviewing some of the accounts at this time, but I believe that this may be acceptable. I would ask you, I had said a little bit earlier that we're still working with free cash and making sure that we can coordinate and confirm a couple of these possible deficits. And we may have another one, so I'm still looking at that. So I can go through them here at this time, and I would like to have you consider also posting a meeting for Monday so that we'll be able to better coordinate and have the most up-to-date information, if you're willing to do that. So perhaps tonight you could approve pending no changes, and if there's changes, you'll come back on Monday. if that's acceptable. So let me go through the following transfers. So your Human Resource Director, which that was a recommendation that came out of the government study. We have 17,000 that we would like to transfer from the Assistant Treasurer position. She has reduced her hours, and this person would be taking on some of those duties. As well as the HR Director shifting over 50,000 from fire salaries. The chief has told us that he believes he has about 53 in excess due to receiving the grant for the 4 additional officers. So I'm not, we're not saying that the salary will be 67,000, but that's what we're wanting to move over and put aside, pending, who we would actually get. I know that the Personnel Board has cited this and classified it in a level 8, which is a high level. So, and the responsibilities of this person would be considerable. Human resource expense, taking $1,000. She or he would have to get up an office and get up to speed, so they have some expense funding. Youth Services Assistant and Director, as you know, due to the change in Mass General Law, if you have a salaried person, they need to be making at least $913 a week. So we have a salaried person who was working 35 hours who was not making that amount. So I had a conversation with the library director and asked her whether or not she had 2 choices, which was, would she want to put her hourly? Her comment back to me was that this person does a lot at home, comes in, fills in, and goes over the time consistently. So the recommendation is to increase the salaried position from 35 to 40 hours, and that person understands that they would have to actually work the 40 hours in the library, and then they would be salaried and you would get more. So we're recommending to shift that out of contract obligations and over. This also will meet the need that we will have due to, I also received notice from the library that because the union contract is not set, there hasn't been a salary increase for their personnel. They are below the MARS minimum. As you know, that they need to increase their budget so much every year. So they are below that minimum, about 1,700, so that will also help to fix that. Police salaries, the chief retirement, we received a memo from the chief, and his retirement amount is $20,653. We are recommending that from contract obligations. He's also recommended $10,000 be set aside for an interim chief to possibly have an overlay with him if it's able to get that interim before December 30th. Water sewer salaries, the Water and Sewer Commission had a meeting. They went through extensively of their salary requirements. As you know, they have a water superintendent, a water sewer controller that is doing a lot of additional work, and they have upgraded the department, the administrative assistant, based on that hourly rate and what they would need to hire, and they're anticipating hiring that person shortly. So this would be out of their sewer fund balance. Collector. In the collector's office, as you know, our collector retired, and we have not backfilled that position yet. We also have someone who is out on personal leave. So our department assistant there has had to do some backfilling, so we're wanting to shift $18,125 from the collector's salary over to the department assistant salary. And cable coordinator, this is an adjustment to the voted amount, and going back through and looking at what he's actually making, we need to make an adjustment in his bottom line salary, and that would come from the fund balance of cable.
Thank you, Ms. Kraber. So then whether you wishes the board with supporting Article 2's motion.
I move we support the motion for Article 2.
Thank you. I would ask that you make prior motion pending no changes.
Pending any review of any changes.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, capital items and related departments. As you know, free cash has not been certified yet. Our paperwork is in. We are hoping that the certification will happen before town meeting, which is why I've asked you also to, if you can clear your calendars for Monday night. So what I have here is these recommendations. I met with the department heads in our department head meeting. We went through the capital. We talked about how best to fund, who needed what. We brought it down to what seemed to be pretty much necessary. So there's a combination here of free cash or stabilization for some of the smaller things, and we're recommending borrowing for some of the two of the larger vehicles. One is an ambulance and one is a highway dump truck with the plow for borrowing. We have some borrowing excess capacity coming in. As Exxon money comes in, we will stop needing a transfer from the town portion to the water fund. We'll be able to use that for debt. So I'll go through this. The fire department, refurbish and repair engine 2 for $60,000. Highway, 2018, a Ford 1-ton truck with plow for $52,453. Ace Trowel sanding unit for $16,136. Police cruiser, 2 of them. His request is $90,000. We have a car that was totaled. We have insurance money. We're using that to deduct from the $90,000. So what we need to appropriate would be $86,556. Tech communications, computer network replacement, $25,000 from the sale of land. As you know, we have completed the sale of $50,000 for one lot. We completed and that money we actually have in our account. We also completed a second, the larger auction last week. We collected $50,000 in deposits, and it's about $300,000 in total.
Not bad.
So,
That room
Not
was
bad.
packed. I was up here when that was
Yes.
going on. It was packed in this room.
yes, sir. So you'll see several sale of land. Town Hall parking lot conceptual design for $4,000, sale of land, and AC for the north wing and lower level, $49,000 from either free cash or stabilization. The cemetery, replace a 2000 GMC pickup 4x4. $36,049, free cash or stabilization. Community center, replace the roof for $21,000 from sale of land. And then the fire and highway, as I said, replace the ambulance 3 for $226,000, and to purchase a new 2018 Freightliner dump truck with plow for $130,000. And both of those we are recommending to borrow for.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. What are the wishes of the board with supporting the motion?
So,
Oh.
if I may just make a suggestion in the motion that you make the motion for free cash or stabilization, and free cash if it comes in, otherwise stabilization.
I make a motion that we support Article 3 with the stipulation that it's free cash or stabilization, whatever it ends up being after
Thank you.
we get our numbers.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second
Motion is
discussion.
second. Any discussion? Mr. Swanson?
Just to be clear, what we're actually voting on to approve is the wording of the motions, I believe.
Yes.
As opposed to voting to support the article in its content.
No,
Correct.
it would be the motion, the article and its content is the motion.
Right, so the motion
So
would be
you
to
are.
approve that from
So if-
those funding sources.
If you wanted to take anything out or add something in, this is the draft recommended capital.
Okay.
Ms. Cooper?
I had a question about the sale of land. Is there any restriction on where the money from sale of land has to go?
It depends on how you purchased it. If you borrowed the money for the land, it would need to go to something that the borrowing would work for. So if you borrowed for 20 years to buy the land, you could only use that towards something that would last for 20 years. If it's tax title, which all of these parcels are tax title, then it is general fund revenue and could be used for anything.
So do they go in its own account, or is that go right into stabilization?
Right now, what we're doing
Or
is
general
putting
fund.
it into a account reserved for appropriation.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the department heads for their work on this also.
And just to make sure, our 7 o'clock is not here yet. So then we'll move on to Article 4. Transfer to and from stabilization funds, Ms. Craver?
Yes, this is an article that, this is just taking whatever excess free cash we have that we have not used and putting it into stabilization. So, if you wanted to, make a motion contingent upon, free cash being certified, your motion could include that, all additional amounts not so used in other articles would be put into stabilization fund. If free cash is not certified, we will remove this and pass over.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the board?
Oh,
It's a mouthful there.
Ms. Craver, what was the recommended motion again?
Yes.
I move to approve free cash, remaining free cash to be deposited into stabilization.
I make that motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second.
I was lost.
To put the remaining funds from free cash into stabilization is also pending that we get free cash.
Yes.
Any discussion on that motion?
Just one thing that I should let you know is that the Municipal Modernization Act made several changes to the law. One of them is that it only takes a majority now to put money into stabilization, but they did keep the 2/3 to remove money out of stabilization.
Smart.
So that's why I have both of them here, and depending on what we're doing, it'll probably just be a majority vote.
Good to know. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of supporting Article 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And we'll move on to Article 5, borrowing authorization reduction. Ms. Craver.
Yes, sir. We have 2 borrowing authorizations where the project is completed and we did not require all the monies. This is very good to be able to come and report that we completed them on time and under budget. Prindle Pond Dam, the amount that was authorized in 2010 was $495,750. The unissued and unused was $230,750.
That's a good number.
That
That's a very
is.
good number.
And I think that much of that was due to the diligence of the residents who were going to be bettered for whatever this amount came out, so,
Right. And so they were bettered for the 260 then?
yes.
Okay. So, and we picked up that extra 230 and borrowing. Now we don't need it.
We don't need it.
Okay.
And the fire truck in 2014, we authorized, we had an authorization to borrow for $312,840, and the unissued is $6,840.
Thank you. And what is the wishes of the board for Article 5?
I would move that we approve the motion for Article 5.
You have motion second to approve the motion for Article 5. Any discussion? A quick question, Ms. Craver. So we're reducing our borrowing by $236,000. Is that reflected in the general fund at all, any place?
No, what happens is when we do our balance sheets at the end of the year, we have to hold for that.
Okay.
Because they add it in, so it's just gonna come off. So it's a housekeeping
Okay.
piece.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, to move to a vote. All in favor of supporting Article 5, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to Article 6, the amendment to town personnel bylaws classification plan for a human resource director. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. As you know, the government study recommended hiring a human resource director. The Board of Selectmen has voted that, and also, I believe you made it one of your goals. We have that here, and the motion is just to move forward with that.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, motion is second to support the motion for Article 6. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Article 7, Ms. Craver, acceptance of Direct Energy Code.
I'm not sure what I can say. You had a full presentation on that. We're certainly hoping that it will pass. as that it will give the town some much-needed money in the amount of $150,000 to use for energy efficiencies.
Thank you. Now, what are the wishes of the board for Article 7?
I make a motion that we approve Article 7.
Your motion? I will second the motion. We'll move to a discussion of Article 7.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Cooper?
this or a similar article has been voted on twice by town meeting.
Mhm.
And both times, the majority of residents there said no, they didn't want this. I've looked through what this code is. It is in the appendix of the building code, not because it is a safety issue, it is an option. And I think that by making it an option, it's asking our residents to live in a house, but say a neighbor who is going to be building will be required to meet different requirements for their building.
Mhm.
So I don't think that that would be an appropriate thing to do.
2 points, Ms. Cooper, I'll address 2 points in that. The stretch engine code we brought to the town meeting, which was, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago, actually more than that, 6, 7 years ago now. It was a different code, so we're actually presenting a different option for the town, so there's different requirements happening. And concerning, different requirements for building a house, such as neighbors, yes, it would be a different requirement. But these are changes that will be happening anyways, so in 2 years from now, those same requirements will still be incumbent upon that new construction. Does that make sense?
No.
So these stretch energy codes are just adopting codes sooner. So in 2 years, when the next building code comes out, these stretch energy codes will be in the baseline. So in 2 years, the new construction for that neighbor will have to meet those requirements anyways.
If I may
Ms. Graver?
also just respond too, because you're absolutely right. It shows a lack of, it shows disrespect to town meeting vote when you continue to bring things back to them when they've said no. The main objections, as I remember it, at the town meeting was that this applied to renovations and remodels. The stretch code has changed now, and it is only new construction. And I think that that is significant enough that it may allay some of the concerns of some of the builders that were there. The other piece is, one piece also was that we didn't do a very good job in educating the people that were at town meeting about what it actually did and didn't do and what the paybacks were. And unfortunately, the main focus was really on the additional cost to the builders. So we do have 15 minutes of a presentation similar to what you had. So we're going to work to actually educate them and give them more information. And the last piece is gone. 1, 2. It'll come back.
I think along the lines
Oh,
that you're,
I got it.
the lines that you're thinking of, there's 2 things with the stretch code. As they said when they started with it, it was like this, and it did have the renovations and remodels in it. Now, the delta between them is very, very small, okay? There's not a lot of difference between the code as it stands now and the stretch code. And I'm just gonna put it in layman's terms, the way I understand most builders are doing it now. Even though we haven't adopted the stretch code, the customers that they're supplying the house for are demanding it, okay? They have to do what they call the door test. They put the fan in the door and they see where they have leaks and stuff. The insulation that they're putting in is a higher R rating, or it's even thicker. They're going with 2x6 construction, all the things that they have to do. The roof, the insulation inside the attic is thicker and better performing. And they're going away from, and I know this for because my son Matt's building a house, he's not gonna have a boiler. They're gonna have split systems. And one of the things that when the bank did, you know, was working with him, they wanted the, what they call the door test. They wanted an energy efficient house. The extra cost that used to be associated with it is now being, you get, the rebates actually come out to be a little bit more money than the cost of the contractor. So I think that between the state and the utilities, they've come up with a pretty fair program. I don't think it was fair before when the town voted it down. I thought a lot of people thought we were cramming something down their throat so that we could get, you know, so that the town could get the money. I don't feel that way anymore. I think after the presentation and some personal experience about what's going on, I think that we've, you know, it's improved, you know, 100%. So that's just my opinion.
Mr. Cooper? And then Mr.
I'd like to
Mr.
just
Swanson.
respond to that. Your son has chosen, he had the option. And I think that most people can have the option too. It's just like having the option of whether to choose wallpaper or paint. It's a personal option, a choice, and it shouldn't be imposed by someone's neighbors.
Right, and so this code is going to change the code, so in 2 years, you won't have that choice. Okay. Mr. Swanson, did you have something to add?
Just a couple of things. I have some mixed feelings on this, to be honest with you. I agree, one of the big issues when it was voted down before was the fact that it applied to renovations and remodels and that kind of thing. So that's a big step in the right direction. The two things that play in my mind is, I used to go through my kids when they were little, how many times do I have to say no? You know, and we do get that once in a while from town meeting. They've spoken pretty clearly on this. The other issue is where the money that's the town has a chance to partake in comes from a fund that the state has set up that they have the option of funding or not funding, or how much they fund it. And maybe I've been doing this too long, but I'm really cynical when it comes to that. If the state has an option to not fund something, I suspect they probably won't. With all of that being said, I didn't feel comfortable offering a motion or a second on this. I would vote in favor of putting it out there for town meeting to decide again, because I think it has changed a fair amount in substance. But I still have some pretty major questions on it.
Absolutely, and just to reiterate, saying no, I completely agree that, you know, continuously bringing the same thing up is not respectful to town meeting. But when you have something like the highway barn, for instance, you know, we bring it up to them, they say no, we iterate on it, we bring a different plan. So this is like that is a different plan to town meeting. Ms. Graber, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I did remember my third point, which was the payback. They're building energy efficient homes. My understanding is that over a short period of time, the actual homeowner is paying less in energy. So by doing this, I think the community is also saying that we believe in energy efficiency, and that we're going to make sure our homes are energy efficient, and that there's a higher payback. So if you live here, you will pay less costs in the long run over the type of building that you live in. And just lastly, and then because I'm not trying to convince you, I'm just giving counter arguments. Lastly, the part about telling someone what they're going to do. We have a building code that just pretty much directs everything they do, from the type of spacing of boards when they build things. So this is just another level of what they need to do to comply with the building code. It's not anybody telling them, it's really town meeting making a decision whether or not how they want their homes built. So it's not being imposed by the selectmen or the building commissioner. It's saying here's an upgrade to our housing stock. And quite often, towns have gotten the benefit of having an elevated reputation, so to speak, for people who are looking for energy conscious communities to live in. So, and I will stop there.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we are voting on a motion to support the motion for Article 7 as written. We'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Chair votes aye, motion passes 3-1. Thank you, very good discussion. Is our 7 o'clock here at Ms. Graber? I do not see.
You know, we may just want to go back. Let me take a look and see if,
I don't want to make sure we don't skip over it.
so I think we can just go forward with this.
Okay.
The members of the Recreation Commission have asked to be placed on the agenda to discuss the skate bike park fund raising goals and objectives. They provided you with a copy of a thermometer sign that they'd like to place on the corner of Muggett Hill and Main Streets to educate the citizens of Charlton on the status of the fundraising supporting the new skate park, bike park, during the deployment from October 1st until June 1st, 2017. The sign dimension is 6 by 3, 2 feet off the ground. They have been given approval by Kurt Meskis, our building commissioner, are looking forward for approval from the board.
Thank you, Ms. Graber. So we'll take under consideration the request for the sign, and we'll welcome them to come back to discuss their fundraising goals and objectives and talk about what their campaign's about.
So would you approve the sign?
I would move
will
to
entertain a
approve.
motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion second to approve the sign as requested. Any discussion? Seeing,
Just
Mr.
quick,
Swenson?
I would like to have them come back and discuss
Absolutely.
their, not only what their fundraising goals are and all of that, there were some serious issues the last time that skateboard park was up and running. And the biggest supporter of recreation I am in wanting to see this park up. I think we have to get that discussion on the table, so those issues can be dealt with beforehand.
Absolutely, and Ms. Creeper, I'll ask you to send correspondence and asking them to, welcoming them to come back at a future meeting, and to definitely be prepared to address some of those previous concerns we had. All right, any other discussions? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. All right, now we'll move back. Sorry for all the jumping around. But Article 8 under special town meeting warrant for the lease of land, Police Station 85 Masonic Home Road for telecommunications towers and facilities.
Yes, we have gone out to bid, and we have been informed by town council that we need approval to make this lease. And what this is, a company will be coming in. They're responsible for removing the old tower at the police department and erecting a new monopole. They will put our equipment back at free of charge, and they will get co-locators to go onto the pole, and we will receive funding from that.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the board for Article 8?
I would move that we approve the motion for Article 8.
Second.
We have a motion, 2 seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all.
I would-
Oh, Ms.
I
Graber.
just would like to thank Chief Purvier for his diligence in working on this project.
Thank you, Chief. Diligence as per usual, we do appreciate it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of supporting the motion for Article 8, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. We'll move on to Article 9, amend restriction for Ash Road.
Yes, sir, we had the town had performed an auction several years ago on a piece of property that was more or less backyard, but one of the things we did, because it was land of low value, we put a restriction on it that it had to go to the abutter, and that it couldn't be, basically to block any splitting of land and making new lots. That abutter is leaving and would like to sell to the abutter on the other side. So we would ask that you approve to amend the restriction. It's still in the same spirit of the restriction, it's just changing from the left side to the right side.
Thank you, Ms. Graber. What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion that we approve Article 9 as written.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and second and a half. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none?
Audience?
Audience? Oh, sorry. Please come up. Yeah, please, sit down. Please say your name and your address for the record. And make sure you speak right into the microphone.
My name is Jacob Gianetta, and I just state my home address.
Yeah.
I live at 22 Old Stafford Street.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a question about the sign for the skate park, what it's for.
I believe it's a fundraising goal, so one of those visual signs is seeing how much money has been donated for a campaign for park renovations, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just wondering about that.
Thank you. Good question. All right, back to Article 9. Any discussion on the motion that we have on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Article 10, Ms. Graver?
As you know, Article 10 has been recommended by the town council as well as Police Chief Purveyor to rescind the sex offender bylaw due to court cases making it illegal and non-enforceable.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath?
as much as I disagree with this, I make the motion that we approve Article 10 as written.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? I'll echo Mr. McGrath's sentiment and Mr. Singer's sentiment and most of the board's sentiment. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but, you know, it's not something that we want to repeal. It's something that's illegal to have on the books. And it's not enforceable. So thank you, town council and the chief, for being diligent in that issue. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Move on to Article 11, acceptance of Jennings Road Extension.
Yes, sir, that is from the owner, and he has, I believe, some compliance things that he needs to do with the planning board before that will be accepted. This planning board will be making a recommendation at town meeting,
So,
and you have already voted to lay out the road, so.
do we need to take any action on the recommendation of this motion?
Yeah.
No? We'll move on to Article 13, unless anyone has any other actions they want to take. The zoning map revisions for medical research development overlay district, Ms. Graver?
The next one is actually
12.
Just
Article
planning board.
12, which is to authorize the development of a municipal gas department. And basically, we're just asking the town to allow us to look into and apply, but we would need to come back for any funding.
Absolutely. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair,
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion that we approve Article 12 as printed.
Second.
Thank you. Motion in 2 seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Now Article 13.
Article 13 is a zoning map revision. The planning board worked with the owner. They have a business and they have purchased a piece of land next to it, which was out of the zoning. I'd like to say that the planning board did a great job. They worked with this developer to come up with a new overlay district, so this is what that is. And the planning board will be making a recommendation, and you generally do not make any actions on zoning revisions.
Correct. And Article 14 and 15 are also planning board's domain.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Swenson.
if I could, I'd just like to say one thing on Article 13.
Yep.
I really see this as a case where we have a very good, supportive business in this town that's a very good neighbor, a very good member of the community, that, if I understand it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, wanted to do some expansion to their facility, which wouldn't have been allowed under current zoning. And as I understand it, this revision was the case of them working with the planning board to come up with actually a different and new zoning category, if you will, that will allow them to meet the needs of what they do. So I think as we talk about different ways, as we try to put a good face on Charlton as a good town to do business with, I think this is a good example that we can put out there of Charlton being a good town to do business with, and I'd like to commend the planning board and everyone involved in seeing a need and being flexible and open and outside the box a little bit to find a way to meet that need.
The EDC was involved.
And the EDC as well, and everyone who's involved in it. I think it's creative, and I think it's a good move. I think it works well for the town going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Swenson, for those very nice words. Ms. Graver?
And what's also true is that the expansion will be moving its other operations here to Charlton, so we're very excited for that.
From other towns, yeah.
All right, any other discussion on the special town meeting warrant? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item under old business, interim police chief hiring process.
Just before we leave
Yes, Ms. Graver.
that, I'm assuming you would like to meet at 6 o'clock Tuesday also?
Yes.
So we'll set up a meeting here and post for that.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. So I'll make sure, I'll read that at the next meeting announcements as well.
Okay, and I just want to follow up and say that by the motions that you took today, and that you were comfortable with, there'll be a good chance we will not need to have the additional night, but thank you for reserving it.
All right, so now we'll move on to the item number 3 under old business, the interim police chief hiring process, which is on page 28.
Yes, sir. The deadline to submit applications for the interim police chief ended October 1st. We received 10 applications and 4 appear to meet the qualifications. If the board wishes to follow the same process as you do for other hires, the chairman and myself would interview and bring you a recommendation. Since the police chief is a much higher profile, you may choose another method, but keep in mind, this is still a civil service position, and any method you choose should be either be your regular process or one that is defendable, that the most qualified applicant receives the job. If the whole board wishes to do the interviews, they would need to be done in a public forum. If you use the usual process, the identities of those who applied will remain confidential. I would ask the board to discuss this tonight and decide the process you would like to take.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. I'll open up to the board for discussion.
Okay, I'll jump in first.
I'm waiting.
Mrs. Swenson?
This is something that we do on a very rare occasion, and I think it's something that needs to be done with absolutely as much transparency and openness as we can possibly do it. And I think having multiple input and ears and eyes on this process can only be a good thing to make sure we do get, in fact, the best qualified candidate. So my personal feeling would be I'd like to see the board doing the interviews, and I think there's something to be said for having them done in an open forum, because that gets the townspeople a chance to see them and have a chance to, in fact, meet the candidates as they're being interviewed.
And I second everything that you just said.
Ms. Kramer, you have something?
So you've received 10 applications. So how would you like to decide which ones you'd like to
I don't know
interview?
if you, I know a few of you had a chance to look through them. There's a couple candidates that didn't meet our requirements. So, just,
Are there some that didn't meet our requirements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I think we would automatically eliminate those.
So-
I'd like to know which candidates didn't meet the requirements and why, that's all.
Yep, I think that's fair.
And I haven't seen the applications, am I missing?
So the applications are on our desk
Okay.
in the folder.
And
So
I will
what I
admit,
can
I
do-
haven't read through them, but I'll make a point to come up this
And I
week
will
and do
So
that.
I have gone through them, kind of perusing them quickly. So what I can do for your benefit would be to take the ones that I think actually meet the criteria. So I will put a spreadsheet in front that tells you if I think they've met it. If I think they have not met the criteria, I will put why. And then if you want, and I'll make some columns for you to check your name, and if you want to interview them, yes. And how does that sound? So then we'll set up the interviews.
So the checks for an interview, would that be majority? If a majority of selectmen select yes, we would interview them, or would it be any check mark?
Well, how would I put this? I would like for you to put the check mark, and majority would be, if they get a majority of the board, then they would be interviewed. You may find someone that, and I'm not saying they're there, because I haven't looked that closely, but you may find someone that meets the requirements, but because of the way they left their job or personal knowledge, you may decide that you're not interested in interviewing that person. So I wouldn't want, I would want you to have an ability to opt out if someone you didn't feel was qualified. Just because he meets the requirements of having been a previous chief, which is what your requirement is, and the years of being a management chief or upper management.
Chief, did you want to say something?
I had mentioned this to, through the chair, I had mentioned this to Ms. Craver. Just one thing that I don't know who you're going to interview. If the person has been out of law enforcement for over 2 years, their powers of arrest are invalid. They could be an administrative person, but they could not jump in a car, go answer a call, lock somebody up. That cannot happen without them repeating an academy. So in an 18-man department, I would just tell you that unless that person, or you have, you can speak to the MPTC, the Municipal Police Training Committee, and see if there's any other type of waiver or whatever on somebody that you might be interested in, okay? Because I could just tell you that currently, the Athol chief, who's a friend of mine, who was with the FBI and retired, Russ Kleber, has to now go to the part-time police academy for 13 or more weeks to do a remedial training before he can have powers of arrest. So that would take you, and the academy needs to be running or whatever. So if that, to me, that would be something important because of the size. We're not a Worcester where you just need to worry about all the other collective things. Things that, because we're a civil service agency, that person should be fully apprised of processes of hiring, reporting, discipline, or what have you. I know you're going to hire a personnel director, and I don't know what that person's skill sets are. But I would just tell you, the police chief, knowing that, because you never know what's going to happen day to day, you know, and having that knowledge would be very, very important. The knowledge of that person going forward now with all the new public records laws. A person who may have been out for a period of time and doesn't know the new requirements under those would need to get up to speed. And I'm not saying that if the person has been out, you know, 18 months, that would be something that I would be strongly suggesting that that person get fully apprised of what those are. Just moving you know, all the demands that are coming forward, so that person, you know, running the agency, aside from the normal, you know, budgeting processes and, you know, day-to-day operations and operating procedures and policies and procedures and what have you, scheduling, just knowing a lot of those other things that are coming down the pike. And, you know, whoever that person is, you know, that I can work with, you know, getting them up to speed on things that we're working on, like the tower, like the regional police, you know, dispatch, all those kind of things, and getting so that it's ingrained, you know, prior to my departure. To me, that, you know, whoever you choose, I would just say to you, make sure some of those things are met. So whoever you choose, questions posed to them would be very important, that they are cognizant of that.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Cooper, did you have something you want to say?
I agree that there needs to be transparency in what we're doing. However, in order to compare candidates, you generally, in my experience, have always asked the same questions to each candidate. And if we're doing this in an open meeting, the first candidate is at a disadvantage, because the others would be able to know what the questions are and be able, and not have, I'm not saying we want to stun anyone, but I'm just saying that the others would be able to know what those questions are.
Ms. Cooper, if you want to address that, and then we'll go to Mr. Swenson.
So one of the ways towns address that is that they have them all show up together at the same time. They sit outside, they do not come into the room, and they do not know the questions. So we could do that if you've got 4 or 5. You know, I would say probably no more than 4, that you would narrow it down to. And you bring up a very good point. I would work with the chair and accept questions that you're interested in, and then put them down so that you would be
Chief,
having
before you go.
a list of questions that you could ask every candidate. So
Yeah,
we would prepare that for you.
And that was something for later discussion I wanted to bring up, was we need to figure out what, we'll come up with a draft set of questions. Mr. Swenson?
I just had a question that I'd like to throw out there, and Chief, I want your input on this too, if we could. The only thing that's been rolling in the back of my head is that if we did the interviews privately, that the applicants would remain confidential. The only reason I could think of where someone might want to remain confidential is if they didn't want where they're currently working to know that they were applying for another job. Is there anything I'm not thinking of? Are there other things, considerations that should be taken into account there?
Ms. Graver?
Generally I would say for the permanent job, you will get people who are working now. This job is a temporary job, not more than a year, so you may have less of concern about that. You know, you're
Okay.
probably looking at more retired people.
And is there any other reason people would want confidentiality that I'm not thinking, that I don't think of? No,
I
okay.
can't think of it in this one.
Okay.
I think Ms. Graver is correct. The candidates that you'd be looking at are people that normally fill in when towns have that void, and they understand that it's not a permanent position because they only can work, if they're retired from law enforcement, they only have a certain amount of money they can earn and a number of hours that they can work. And so those are the kind of things, as far as, you know, whether they applied, you know, in Charlton or another community that needed a police chief, I don't think that's a big
Okay.
deal, because they're just the interim, they're a fill-in. If it was different, and they were going for a permanent position, just like when you do with any, you know, whether it's a town manager or a town administrator, and you know, you got 10 or 20 applicants, and then you're narrowing it down. I think until you get down to the final 3 or whatever, the confidentiality there, but I don't think that that's the same case in an interim for my position.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something I was
Good
missing.
question.
That's all.
So I would then, perhaps it would be good to figure out a way to get down to the 4 candidates or 5 candidates that we would like to interview. So do you want to do that matrix?
I'll do your matrix. I
Thank
will
you, Chief.
also
Thank you, Chief.
include the chief's comment as to whether or not they are vested with police powers presently.
That's a very good question. Thank you, Chief, for bringing that up. Chief Cloutier, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just have a quick question about the process. In the event that the interim person is in a position for a certain amount of time, is the interim person available to take the permanent job if it's offered to them through the process at a later date? Or are they excluded?
Because they would have to go through civil service and.
So far, what I think that the board has made a priority is that this person would not be.
Okay.
So I can speak to that. You just stay right there. So the process, because we're a civil service department, person has to take civil service exam, okay? Then the board has decided to also do an assessment center on top of that. So if the person's retired, they would have to pay back into the retirement system to come out of retirement. So I don't think that is, you know, unless the person had a very low salary and it was lucrative for them to do it, first they'd have to pass the test, they'd have to be in the top, and so there's gonna be an internal promotional exam and also a statewide exam. So that person's competing across the state and within the department. So you're looking at a different dynamic as opposed to if it was just open and non-civil service.
Thank you. Ms. Graver?
The other piece is that hopefully this chief has 100% of their focus on taking care of the Charlton Police Department. And one of the reasons for going out that the board said was so that the people who are actually taking the test and applying will have that time freed up. And it didn't seem to be fair to have them trying to run a police department at the same time as studying. So, but the real answer, I think, is yes, it could, because we have 2 tests that are being put out. One is the promotional and one is the open. If that person applied for the open, you know, against the board's wishes, and they turned out to be number 1, and no one passed in the promotional, conceivably you could have that person come to the top. I highly doubt it, but I guess the answer really could be, maybe.
It's possible.
But I don't think it's
but
the
unlikely.
intention.
And I agree. I agree that's probably not the intention. Just curious, trying to look forward a little bit in case of, it did, and that was one of my questions. Would they be excluded from taking, that position? But you don't know who's the
Right.
pool
And
is either.
nothing would stop those candidates from applying anyways, even if they didn't get the chief position.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, yep. Just interesting, that's all.
Besides,
Just a
you already
question.
have a job.
Thanks, boss.
so it seems like the board is in agreement that we'll, work to create a way to figure out the top 4 candidates from the board decision.
So I'll ask the board if you can send me questions that you would like addressed, and if I get similar questions, I might rework the question. So if you can not be married to the actual wording of the question, but the substance of the question.
Thank you. And also, once again, even if you've seen it, the resumes and applications, take another look at those. And can we send those out via,
I
no?
would prefer not to.
Okay. I see, come in.
I think we can find time to come up here.
Yeah, I'll come up.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, so that tackles both, getting it down to 4, and then getting a series of questions. Thank you. All right. Any more discussion on that? Okay. We'll move on to our student select person support. Ms. Chupka, it's your time to shine.
What I have for this meeting is the college financial aid night was held
Rick,
on
do you want to
Wednesday.
just give her your?
Oh, I'm sorry, absolutely.
Thank you. The college financial aid night was held on Wednesday, September 28th in the auditorium. Guidance counselors and members of the school's administration discussed methods of financial aid at state schools with the parents who attended the event. The first honors dinner was held on Thursday, September 29th in the cafeteria. Students and parents were served dinner by members of the staff. The night also included words from Principal Chaplain, Superintendent Greg Gasto, and from a guest speaker, attorney and Shepherd Hill alumni, Alex Moradian. I don't know how to say that. 116 student scholars were invited to the dinner. The SATs was given to members of the senior class on Saturday, October 1st at Shepherd Hill. The varsity football team had their first win of the season on Friday at home against Algonquin, 31-0. They also won against Westboro. Their next home game will be Friday, October 14th against Leominster. Friday was a professional development day for all staff members, which means that it was an early release for the students. Classes ended at 11:15. Thursday is a parent-teacher conference, which allows the students to have a half day. Parent-teacher conferences start at 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then again at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This week is Shepherd Hill's pep rally and homecoming week. The homecoming dance starts at 6 in the Shepherd Hill cafeteria on Saturday. We've also been doing penny wars to get some competition stirring. And lastly, PSATs start Wednesday, October 19th, and they're open to all juniors.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Chupka?
Isn't Alex Meridian, was he in your class?
He was.
I was gonna say that name is very.
Yeah, it's like, yeah,
He's a lawyer now?
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Good for him.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
and well
very
done.
much.
Welcome to the board.
Thank
We look forward to serving with you this year. So, with that, Ms. Graber, can you top that?
Yes, fire department ISO rating. The fire department was notified that their ISO rating for the year is a 5.5 fire protection class. Last year it was 6.6. This usually reduces the homeowner's insurance rates in the town of Charlton. A lower rating means the fire department is better prepared. Thank you, Chief. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Graber.
Most of our work has been.
Yeah,
Wisdom from last meeting, huh?
yeah, almost too far. All right, any questions for the town administrator? Seeing none. Any other business unknown at the time of posting? Seeing none. Our next meeting will be the 18th at 6 p.m. before a special town meeting. And then the next meeting after that will be November 25th.
November 25th? We don't have one.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that October 25th?
That would be October 25th.
Yes, I'm sorry. That is correct. So I'll make sure, so October 25th,
So we'll fix it.
and then October 18th will be our pre-town meeting. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath,
I make a motion that we enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining regarding clerical union negotiation update, strategic process, and number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate regarding the Southbridge Water IMA, strategic process. If the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. And the chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll move by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Cooper?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We're now in executive session. We'll be exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Good night.